I just had to show off my roaring lion earrings today. Aren't these great, you guys? Sometimes you just want to wear a screaming animal on your head, you know? Hello everybody, my name is Kara, and today I am here with my 5 tips to make reading classics less intimidating. Now, I really enjoy reading classic novels, and I've been thinking recently about how intimidating they can be to pick up. And even as somebody who does enjoy reading them and who reads a lot of them, there are certain books that I'm a little afraid to read because I feel like they're going to be so much work or be really dense and confusing, like Victor Hugo's. But I really think that as a group of books, they have a lot to offer modern readers. So in an effort to make them a little less scary for people, I've kind of put together some of the ways that I like to read classic books that I think can really help people who are intimidated by them. I think that this video can also help you sort of get into genres or into a particular book that you have been putting off because you're scared of it. My first tip is to pay attention to genres. Now, I think there's a tendency to group all books that were published before a certain year together as classic novels. And I think that that has some value because they are written in a certain style and different time periods have trends or subject material or themes that tend to crop up a lot. But I think that sometimes that means that people treat all classic novels like they're the same, and like any genre, that's not true. So if you've decided that you wanted to start reading more classics, think about what kind of books you like to read in general. For example, if you know that you hate mystery novels, maybe don't make your first classic a Daphne du Maurier, you know? It doesn't mean that you can't branch out later, but definitely start with something that you would be interested in even if you didn't know the book was a classic. If you like social commentary and romance, you could go for Jane Austen. If you want sort of a creepy, like, ghost story, Wuthering Heights might be a good option for you. Basically, classics is not really a genre. It's a grouping of books that makes it easier for us to talk about them, but it doesn't really tell you what the book is about. My second tip is to not limit yourself to this arbitrary list of classic novels. You know, we've all seen those books that are like 100 novels you need to read before you die, or this magazine's list of like the best classic novels of the last 100 years. And those can definitely be useful, but I don't think you should limit yourself to them too much. Especially if you're still trying to get into classic novels and maybe you don't have a history of enjoying them. Think about picking up something like a children's classic, like The Secret Garden or Peter Pan. They tend to be slightly more accessible while still having all of the value that an adult classic novel has. This trick also means that you can sort of expand your definition of what a classic novel is. I mentioned Daphne du Maurier earlier. Maybe you're not interested in Rebecca, you might really enjoy My Cousin Rachel. The trick for this one really comes down to not limiting yourself to what another person says is a classic novel. Number 3 might be kind of an obvious one, but that is don't pressure yourself too much when reading these books. Feel free to take breaks from reading it and tell yourself it doesn't matter if it takes you an entire year to read one book. Even give yourself permission to read other books in between reading this classic. Just don't make this into an extra stressor. It might be a little intimidating, but ultimately reading is still supposed to be fun. I recently read a novel that I had been putting off for a long time, which was Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell by Susanna Clarke. And it's not a classic novel, but it's very much written in that style, and it's 1,000 pages long. And when I was reading it for Tome Topple, I told myself that I would let myself take breaks and this wouldn't be the only book I had to read it for that period. And just by giving myself sort of that out, I didn't even want to pick up another book. I ended up flying through this novel and it became one of my favorites of the year. That's a way that these tricks can sort of apply to other books that you've just been putting off for a while that aren't necessarily classic novels. Number 4 is kind of a weird one, but it's don't spoil yourself. Now, I know that these novels that have been around for a few hundred years, most of us probably know how they end. Like, let's be honest, Romeo and Juliet is not gonna have a spoiler warning anymore. But I think you'd be surprised at how easy it is to go through life and just somehow never find out what these great classics are about. For example, when I read Wuthering Heights for the very first time a few years ago, I had somehow managed to go through my entire life up to that point without ever actually knowing what that book was about. I knew the very basic premise, but I really went in blind and I ended up really enjoying that book. So if at all possible, I would say don't read a very detailed plot summary of the classic that you're going for. I know it's tempting when you're stuck in all that older language to try and read a summary so you know what's going on, But if you can just sort of put that off for a while and read the book first, and then maybe go back and read the summary to figure out if you missed anything, I think it will really improve your experience. And finally, my fifth and final trick is to make it a fun hobby rather than an assignment. There are lots of ways to do this. Maybe after you've read the book, reward yourself by watching a movie adaptation of it. Or even things like having a little tea party while reading a Jane Austen novel. Things like that just make it more of a fun part of your day and less of something that you're forcing yourself to do. So those are my 5 main tricks for reading classic novels or just books that you are a little bit intimidated to pick up. Obviously, I'm not an expert in this. These are just some things that I found to be really helpful to me, and hopefully you guys will find at least one that sort of inspires you. Definitely feel free to pick and choose and find what actually works for you. Thank you guys so much for watching. I will see you soon with another video, and I hope you love the next book you read. Bye!